My friend Dan Bongino came out with a warning a couple of weeks ago, and he made it super clear that there were going to be things happening. And I spoke somewhat recently with him, and I mentioned this to him because I'm like, that warning you have, that really resonated with people. And he said, take it seriously. Take it seriously, Trish. There's more coming. So I want to play it for you because in light of Comey likely being indicted sometime in the next couple of days, I think it's pretty important. Let's listen in to Dan Bongino with my former colleague. Actually, they're both my former colleagues. Everyone's my former colleague. I think I've worked too many places. Anyway, Dan Bongino speaking with Sean Hannity about what's coming next. Listen carefully, guys. There are some clues in this. And I don't mean about the labradoodles. The important stuff is in the beginning.
Let me ask you about, are you going to be looking into, Cash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg, or Nathan Wade, or Fonnie Willis and the DOJ? Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. The FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your, partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of, I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make, I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure.
No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife, I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. But if you're
you want a friend in D.C., get a dog.
We're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. You want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends in D.C. You've been doing this, 30 years? There are no friends here.
It's true. Well, I hope he considers me a friend. I certainly consider him a friend. But here's the thing. I mean, it's not just James Comey. Now, there's a lot of them going down. You get Shifty Shift, right, who's caught in the crosshairs of this. James Comey, allegedly. I am going to correct this again because technically it's sources. I mean, I happen to think it might be James Comey. That'd be a good source. James Comey sources telling MSNBC he'll be indicted. This is coming within days, okay? So again, this goes back to what we heard from Dan Bongino, that there was a lot coming, a lot in the pipeline. I want to go to MSNBC as they got this news in.
Three sources familiar tell MSNBC former FBI Director James Comey is expected to be indicted in the coming days. The full extent of the charges being prepared against Comey is unclear. Joining us now, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and MSNBC Senior Investigative Correspondent Carol Lenig. Chris O'Leary, Ashley Parker, still with us. Carol, help us understand the reporting.
So, Katie, we have some sources who say that for several weeks now, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia, and actually in offices that are potentially much further south than Alexandria, have been eyeing ways to indict Comey, and they are getting very much closer. The statute of limits, rephrase, they are arguing that Comey, there is evidence to suggest Comey lied to Congress in his testimony on the Hill in September of 2020. And for viewers out in the audience who may not be legally as nerdy as me and Ken, I'll just say that there's a statute of limitations to charge people with the crime of lying to Congress or perjury, and that's 5 years. The 5-year statute runs this month.
So what exactly is he accused of lying about, Ken?
Well, there was an
Obamagate, Russiagate, Russia. Remember? Yeah. Remember in we're going back to 2016? They came up with that whole idea they were going to go after Carter Page because somehow they found all these people that were, targeted by literally James Comey's FBI. And he was asked about this by Nicole Wallace, who's another MSNBC hack. And he was asked about this at the 92nd Street Y, and he kind of laughed about it all and said, oh, they didn't really know what they were doing. So they took advantage of that, and they went in and they had this preconceived notion that, you know, they didn't want Donald Trump to win. If he were to win, they had to figure out a way to stop it somehow. Remember Peter Strzok, Lisa Page? Maybe I got them backwards. Was it Lisa Strzok and something? Well, whatever. The lovebirds, okay? And this idea that somehow we could stop it, they were going to stop Donald Trump from winning. Well, guess what? You can't do that. You really can't. I mean, you want to talk illegal, banana republic type stuff. That's exactly what we're talking about. So if he is guilty of these allegations, if he, in fact, was doing things on Obama's behalf to try to create a different narrative, I mean, how many times do we have to hear, not my president? For goodness sakes, they got Jimmy Carter on his last legs to get up there and say he's not a legitimate president. We had Hillary Clinton. He's not a legitimate president. He's not. He was elected by the Russians. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, you understand how detrimental that was to this country? Don't you think that somebody should be paying the price because it was just so flat out god-awful wrong? I think so. Tulsi thinks so.
American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
You better believe it must end. You better believe it must end. And I'm hopeful it will. I'm hopeful it will. We have some new news coming into us that I just want to bring you at this moment. It's not entirely clear why this is happening, but I can tell you my other former colleague, it's getting kind of strange, Pete Hegseth, I should say Secretary of War Hegseth, he is calling a meeting right now of all military leaders, generals. Apparently he's bringing them in to Virginia. It is not clear why. This is actually quite unusual. So we do know that James Comey is expected to be indicted quite shortly. We don't know if these two things are related, but top U.S. military leaders are being called in. They're summoned around the world. So all these military officials that are stationed around the world are being called in. They've been summoned to Virginia. This is fascinating. This week by Defense Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. So top U.S. military officials stationed around the world, summoned. Forgive me, I'm trying to type and to write in real time as we get this news in. And hopefully we don't see any spelling errors, but you know what? I think you guys will all forgive me. This is an unusual thing, okay? This is a very unusual thing to see happen. I'm not sure when this has happened really in recent history before, certainly not in my career. The large number of generals who could be in attendance would include those working in conflict zones. This is, again, without recent precedent. So highly, highly unusual. It has apparently stirred some anxiety among some top military officials. Don't forget Mr. Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of War Hegseth, has fired several senior officers. So are these things related perhaps to the issue going on with Comey? Are they anticipating some kind of problem resulting from that? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to speculate too much. Maybe you guys have some ideas and some thoughts on this, but I think that it's important to cover this breaking news as it's quite massive right now, and a lot of friends of mine are saying this. We're also getting news that the Justice Department is officially pushing prosecutors to investigate George Soros' foundation, because the fear is that that foundation has actually put money into organizations that have been indeed quite anti-American and led to, unfortunately, some of the radicalization of some individuals. So those allegations are out there, and that's being looked at. Whether or not any of these things are intertwined at this moment in time, we don't know. But again, Hegseth is said to have summoned U.S. military brass from all over the globe for this meeting, and he is not saying why. We do have a few other things going on. We have, for example, the shutdown layoff threat. I want to get to that. I'm going to be joined by my friend Kent Strang from Americans for Prosperity, who eats, sleeps, and breathes policy. So he knows all about this CR and how we get a clean CR. I know that the administration is talking about firing massive amounts of people. In other words, in the past, right, what would you have happen? You would have the government shut down, everybody gets a 2-week vacation, they come back, they get paid, their back pay, and they're back to work. Very different this time around. This president wants a smaller government, and if Chuck Schumer isn't willing to give him a clean CR, he's like, okay, then we're going to get a smaller government one way or another. So that's also in the back of everyone's mind. I'm reading from some of your comments here. Clean house, somebody's saying that, this is wild. Everyone buckle up. Going to be a wild ride. Take it back to the airbase. We don't know. We don't know at this point. I will work the phones, as I always do, and I will try to bring you more information as we get more of this together, again, by the live show tomorrow. But I can tell you that this is extremely unusual. I have a lot of respect for Pete. He was a good friend. I'll just tell you a personal story. When I was, frankly, you can call it whatever you want. I guess technically I wasn't fired because they couldn't fire me. I was under contract. But when Fox and I parted ways because I dared to say the unthinkable, like maybe we shouldn't be shutting down the entire country and that the Democrats might actually turn this into a political event back in March 2020. Yeah. That was a big deal. And the left pounced, and I found myself without any kind of management support. So, I was out on my keister. Fine. It all worked out in the end, right? I'm very happy over here. Believe me, I'll never go to work for anyone else ever, ever, ever again. That's my motto to myself. So remember to subscribe, share, make a comment. Every bit helps. I would say this. Pete was just one of the greatest guys, and I can count on one hand, really, the people that reached out to me, including the President of the United States, who called me at home on Saturday morning. After Fox made this announcement, I heard immediately from Pete. I heard from my friend Rachel Duffy. I heard from a fair amount of people. Tammy Bruce over at the State Department. I heard from some really good eggs, okay? Really, really good eggs. Eric and Lara Trump, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who was then dating Don Jr. And you know what? You don't forget this. Bongino, you just don't forget this, okay, guys? Because, when push comes to shove and you're persona non grata, when your friends are the ones that you hear from, okay? So maybe I can count on two hands, but it was not a ton of people. It was the people that actually believed in what I was saying and were respectful enough, and friends that were close enough to reach out. So I think that, Pete's a smart guy. Princeton undergrad, he worked at Bear Stearns back when Bear Stearns was a thing. So he had a job in finance. He's a smart guy, and whatever he's doing so with good reason. So we'll continue to watch for this. Again, I just want to reiterate this headline. Top U.S. military officials from all over the world are being summoned to Virginia, hundreds of generals for a big meeting. And it comes at a really interesting time as we have the federal government going after these groups that they believe are related to some of this domestic radicalization. It comes as we look at James Comey getting indicted, likely Letitia James getting indicted, and you have this sort of fracture, right, between state and local and federal government, where you have the likes of LA or the likes of Chicago saying, hey, we're not going to cooperate with ICE, even though Congress sets the rules on immigration. And ICE is charged with actually tracking down illegal migrants, especially ones that are criminal, and getting them out of the country. And you have these communities saying we refuse to cooperate. So things are getting very heated. And let's hope that this is all okay. All right. Let's all hope for the best, because we certainly don't want any kind of discord, but we've seen plenty of it. I mean, considering what happened to my friend Charlie, right? That tells you everything you need to know. Again, I want to reiterate that this is happening as we look at a government that could possibly be shutting down. I mean, isn't this interesting, right? So I want to talk about this a little bit, because a government shutdown is something that we've seen a lot of, and we've certainly heard lots of talk of in the past. And you know how these things go. You shut down briefly, temporarily, and then all of a sudden things like come back together, right?